You are listening to Based in Fact, a true crime podcast. Join host Lisa O'Brien and Kyle Evans as they examine America's most infamous true crime cases as they were established in our courts and the basis for the decisions of the appeals courts, not the court of public opinion. Here's Lisa and Kyle.
Welcome to Season 4 of Based in Fact, a true crime podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Lisa O'Brien. We have Kyle Evans is joining us as well. And I'm joined by the Roundup True Crime with Mike, Roberta Glass of the Roberta Glass True Crime Report, and Jessica, all the way from merry old England, we are all here for a tribute to a friend of, I think, all of our podcasts and all of our efforts in true crime, Robb Chadwick, who passed away in December 2024. So without any further ado, let's just get started in our tribute to Robb. So let me start with Mike. Why don't you tell us how you met Robb and your fondest recollections of him and his work?
Okay, I guess I met Robb on Reddit. We both are both covering not at the time. I was just a reader or nothing. I wasn't a podcaster or anything. So I was following the Adnan Syed case, and I can't remember who reached out to who on the Reddit because we were both prolific responders and arguers on that. So we kind of met on that, and then we direct messaged and started talking about the case. And then he introduced me to Jay Wilds' lawyer, and so the three of us were good friends. And so we did some just normal text message groups about some of the cases. We would go over some of the ones on the on some of the Dateline episodes and other cases, but we were always had not said then whether or not what would happen with that. So most of my memories about Robb were on that. I guess the fondest memory is I got to meet him at CrimeCon last year when I went to Nashville. He hosted me, and he and his partner Bill were very gracious to me. They showed me around the city, and then we spent a couple of days meeting and just seeing everything at CrimeCon. So that is how I knew Robb.
And Roberta, the floor is yours.
Well, mine's a little bit similar, but not quite so intimate. How I started my podcast is when I started waking up to innocence fraud, this sort of innocence fraud tsunami that was sweeping our country. I wanted to talk about it a little bit, and so I had the idea that I would just record something, especially about the two things, Adnan Syed and Serial, because I had a very strong reaction to Serial and the West Memphis 3, and I thought that maybe I'd quit after that. So I did these very amateur recordings and I put them up as a podcast, and I would say that the reaction, I think I have my retractors on Reddit, very loud retractors on Reddit. And there was always this Robb Chadwick who was defending me. And I took note, I was like, oh, and he always knew a lot about the case and a super, he really, really delved into the case. And I think that's probably what, I'll miss so much of his just vast knowledge of the Haymon Lee's case, just everything about it. He seemed to know. And if I ever had any kind of question or anything, I could always come to him and ask him. If I didn't know it and he didn't know it, then I knew it was certainly pretty obscure fact that I was going after, if you didn't know it. And so when Adnan Syed got out of prison, thanks to Kimberly Fox, no, was it
Marilyn Mosby.
Thank you.
And Becky Feldman.
Confusing them. Thank you, Becky Feldman, and the whole right. Thank you. The Soros backed DAs. I'm confusing. I was just so, I was really devastated by it. And I did an interview with the Lee family lawyer.
Yes.
And then I did a couple episodes with, Rob, and just trying to talk out like what happened, because the filing itself, I know this is a little off topic, but the filing itself felt like it was written by the Innocence Project class and not at all by a DA or a lawyer. It was so oddly put together and written, and the things that they were claiming were so hard to believe. Then they were claiming Brady violations after that. It was, the whole thing was wild. And I just appreciated, I think also what I'll miss about Robb Chadwick was he had just a very even, kind of a bemused way of looking at things that were, where I would get kind of riled up. He had a way of just kind of bringing some calm and very rational, calm, fair-minded way of looking at the case. And I appreciated that. Kind person, very kind person.
The epitome of a Southern gentleman.
That's what I thought too. Lisa, that came to mind too. Same thing. Yeah.
Yes, and Jessica agrees. So, how about Jessica? You've got the floor now for Rob. I think you're muted.
How about now?
You're good.
Yay!
Yay!
Right, that went
Welcome
well.
Back.
So yeah, I met Rob through True Crime, really. Particularly, we both listened to the Prosecutors podcast and met in their kind of group, and it was very easy to pick up very quickly that Rob knew an incredible amount of detail about so many cases, and often cases that I'm particularly interested in. So Adnan Syed, also Leo Schofield, and various other cases as well. And he's someone who would listen to me when, because I take similarly to Roberta and possibly some of the rest of us as well. No one wants to listen to me about West Memphis 3 because everyone is convinced they're innocent. And you probably agree with me. Amanda Knox, no one wants to talk about that. Rob would. And yeah, just generally a really, really lovely man. Definitely a Southern gentleman. Honestly, like the Southern men I meet in true crime groups, it's convinced me that Southern men in general just must be wonderful because there's so many kind of lovely, lovely people. And Rob is one of those. And just kind of, when we talk about things other than true, well, there's one other thing I'll mention is he, on Adnan Syed, he did an interview with Jay Wilds a few years back, and he caught some flack for talking about some of the things Jay had said on Twitter because he hadn't recorded it at Jay's request, because Rob was a proper journalist. And a lot of these people, these supporters, would have gone to that interview and secretly recorded it. Rob didn't. And they said, oh, well, we don't know what Jay said to you. I know what Jay said to Rob because Rob was an honest reporter of the facts. Yes. But when we talk about things other than true crime, I mean, he posted something a few months ago just about Bill and just said they've been together since 1993. So after, it's lovely to see two people still in love at that time. And he just posted now greeting cards are so much. On special days we just go to Walgreens and pick each other one off the shelf, read it and put it back. And that's just I thought that was really sweet. And there's also something he said to me that's stuck with me. It's kind of I wrote a kind of post and I'm worrying about passing, worrying about how I look. And Rob commented, "Don't worry about passing. You are Jessica. That's all you ever need to be. When you worry about other people's perception, you are selling yourself short. The only person you need to please is you." And yeah, that has really stuck. I think that's really important. Yeah. So thank you.
That is so true. And I totally agree with that. Don't worry about anybody else but yourself. And I kind of envy you and Mike, because you had a personal connection that I didn't have time to really forge, because I knew him on Facebook and social media, and he was great with my podcast. He shared every episode I ever posted, and he was always, made a kind post, and he was a great guest, but I never had time to connect with him personally the way y'all have. And I regret that I didn't take the initiative and do that sooner, because he was such a great guy.
Yeah, and there's so many people who we kind of come across and talk to, and maybe don't get those chances, and there'll be other people who I will possibly regret one day not having made those connections with.
Mhm.
But I know that when you were asking for people to come on, Lisa, the first person I thought of was Mike. Mike
Yes.
has known Rob for definitely quite a lot longer than I have, and again, like if it's Adnan Syed, I would be messaging Rob or Mike and just check something for me, and they would always know. So
Yeah.
yeah,
He did, and he was a true journalist as well. And
Oh.
they're a very, very rare breed, because he was objective, and he kept
Yeah,
his objectivity, um, which you don't see as much anymore, especially in mainstream media.
absolutely. Yeah.
So, um,
Yeah, I think the two things I was thinking that Rob would hate that he didn't get to see it. Well, he wanted to know what was going to be the end of the Adnan Syed case. So, unfortunately, this case may go on forever, and I might even die before the Adnan Syed case gets finished with everything that could go on with it. And then the new one that he really cared about deeply that just got back in the news was the Ziegler case. So he really cared about that one too. And Glissop is, I guess,
Glossop.
Glossop.
Yeah.
I thought it was that the Supreme Court will hand down their ruling sometime soon, and he didn't get to hear that. So
Yeah.
I think those are the three cases he wanted to hear.
Mike, could you clarify for me, Ziegler? That's William Ziegler in Florida.
Tommy Ziegler. So it just came out yesterday that the DNA testing came back, and the defense is arguing that the DNA shows that he didn't do it. So,
yeah.
But I don't think it was clear enough. But that was a very hard case. It was a very intricate forensic case. So it's kind of hard to know. But I still got to cover it, or I still got to understand what they're saying.
Okay. And actually, Adnan, I think he predicted the sentence reduction after the conviction was reinstated, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, I think he did, and he really thought that Adnan would never go back to prison. I still have my hopes up that he will, but we'll wait. I mean, I guess Bates, not to get too, I think Bates wants to just cover his political rear end and try and find the medium. I think that's why they're having that hearing before the MTV, but we'll see. I mean, that's a month away, and then we'll see what happens there.
Yeah. Well,
his sentence was reduced. I'm a little behind.
No, he recently filed a motion to reduce.
I saw that. Yeah, I just didn't know if that was ruled on.
And actually, Bates has not yet made any decision on the redoing the motion to vacate.
Yeah, the only thing that's kind of odd is that Bates asked for the hearing 2 days before it was due. So February 28th was his due date for the motion to vacate, and he asked for a hearing on the 25th and 26th. I'm not sure which of those 2 days or if it was both for the JRA application. So people are thinking that he's trying to cover it, say he'll support the JRA and withdraw the motion to vacate. But Lee's family came and said no, you can't do that. You got to rule on the MTV first. So,
Mhm.
well, let's see what the judge says in a month.
But he's still out of prison, right? He's not incarcerated.
Yeah. Yeah, he's still, they didn't return him
He's
to prison.
teaching at Georgetown University with another guilty killer, Marty Tankleff.
Oh Lord,
So, which is
unbelievable.
So, I think that it's very hard to put someone back in prison once they've been out. It's an odd thing. It doesn't. I've seen it's happen so few times. There's a New York case that I've been dying to talk about, where a guy got out with an Innocence Project lawyer, and he got out, and then this gentleman came on the basis of a confession tape from someone else in the neighborhood. And the gentleman who made the tape came to the court. The guy who made the tape came to the court and said, look, I was paid to make this tape from the lawyer. This is a fake tape, a fake confession. And the judge said, well, we don't know what the jury would have done had this jury heard this fake confession. So he stays out, and then he sued for wrongful conviction and won a whole pile of money. So, and Marty Tankleff, same thing. When Cuomo decided not to retry Marty Tankleff, who killed his adoptive parents, Arlene and Seymour Tankleff, he said in his thing that he should no way be considered innocent, and that he deserves no money. He got $13.3 million. So it sued everybody.
Yeah.
And it's teaching at Georgetown with Adnan Syed. So I think it's just, there was something very, there was a fascinating moment in the hearing that let Adnan out, where young Lee, Heyman Lee's brother, said, like, just give me a week to get there. I really want to be a part of it. And that's the whole violation of victims' families' rights.
Yes.
Key
So-
there. Thank God they said no, because he could be exonerated and suing for taxpayer money at this point. Exonerated, I say, with a wink. I don't
Yeah.
consider him
Yeah.
exonerated in any shape or form, but is that they said no, he has to get out right away. They had the whole class there to cheer him on. They had the whole crowd, Sarah Koenig. It was a whole Kodak moment, PR moment, and they could not ruin it by delaying it a week. They didn't know if they could get that crowd back, and that crowd is an important factor in convincing the public that this person is innocent. Otherwise, there wouldn't be a crowd there to support them if they were really guilty, right?
Well, that's
So-
what told me the fix was in. I mean, the press
Yeah.
conferences were scheduled. They were, the press was waiting. So the fix was in before the hearing ever happened. And that was because of the ex parte a couple of days before.
That in camera,
Yeah.
and that judge is really, I found it curious that the Supreme Court ruled that the judge could not rule on, the same judge could not rule on this matter. I found
Yeah,
that-
if it had been any other profession, Finn would have been fired. Like,
Mhm.
but because you're a judge,
Yeah.
you have to go through a long process to get somebody fired. And so, yeah. The other one I was going to say, there was a case where Crosley Green was out for 3 years, and they did send him back to prison. So there is hope. Like it went up to one of the federal district courts about his Brady claims, and they finally ruled it wasn't Brady, and he had to go report back after 3 years of being out. So there is a possibility it can happen.
Tim Hennis got tried again militarily after DNA came out, and there was a made-for-TV movie with Ricky Schroeder called Innocent Victims, all about his innocence and wrongful conviction. And then he gets convicted militarily and is on military death row after he killed Katie Eastburn and her babies. So there's
That
always
was because
hope.
the DNA
Definitely.
came out.
That's right.
After his
That's right.
state court acquittal, I think it was. So, and they had to do it military because they would have been against double jeopardy. The state of North Carolina couldn't try him again. So, But he committed murders while he was active military, so it was entirely appropriate.
Yeah, I think Rob, he went on the Roundup, didn't he, Mike? After the one of the Maryland Supreme Court decisions, I think, in the Adnan case.
Yeah, I think I had him on once with Anne. So yeah,
Anne,
we did we covered it once, and I've had Anne a couple of times on it. So
yeah, and
so
Anne is obviously
So the three of us kind of discussed the case, and we have different opinions. I mean, different opinions on it, but we both agree that Adnan killed Hay. Just the only question that we had, and Rob was a lot more firm on it, was whether or not he got in that car with the intention of killing her. Where Ann and I have questions about that, but Rob was pretty adamant that he got in that car wanting to kill her.
Oh well, he wrote, "I wanted to kill." Why do you question that?
I'm going to kill.
Well, people say that all the time, and it was written at that. There's some evidence. I mean, some that things that he did kind of are very questionable, even I know teenagers are dumb, but that you would not plan it that way. So
people say that all the time, but do they write that all that time on the back of their girlfriend's breakup note?
And
I mean, there's evidence of both. So I mean, I'm not gonna but I mean, he told his lawyers, please go look out for some note. He said that looks bad, and so we think it's the breakup note, but or there could have been something else. But yeah, he told his lawyers to please try and find something before the police do.
I did not know that.
Evidence of planning is giving his phone and his car to Jay that day.
But we're getting but it would also but it would also be a plan of that he just wanted to get her back, and that he was going to talk to her, give her the flower, and he thought she would just say, yes, I love you, Adnan, I'll come back. And then I personally think that the last question that he asked her was like, are you sleeping with Dawn? She says yes, and that's what he finally snapped. But the only person that can know whether or not he got into that car to kill her is Adnan, and he's not talking, so we'll never know.
I'm curious who thinks he's going to reoffend, and in what way.
I've been thinking about that because someone commented essentially Adnan is going to reoffend, and my kind of thinking is I think he probably won't, but not because he's changed, not because he's a reformed character or he's been rehabilitated, because how 20 whatever years in prison when you're insisting that you're innocent the whole time and not doing rehabilitative work isn't going to rehabilitate you. I think he'll probably stay out of criminal offences. Let's not talk about how he might behave non-criminally towards women in his life in particular. So narcissism. Is coercive control a criminal offence in the US? Well, it might be in different states.
It depends on how.
No, it's not. No, it's not. No, it's not.
So he would potentially, but I don't think he'll go out and kill anyone or beat anyone up because he's going to have eyes on him. With that said, there are plenty of exonerated unquote murderers who go out and kill people. There's one recently who was a multi-millionaire and killed someone over a $1,200 drug debt. So, never say never. But yeah, Rob was very quickly on the ball about saying Adnan's not going to go back to prison. It'll be sentence reduction. I've been praying that that Adnan will go back to prison. Rob wasn't religious. Rob was just he knew the score, I think.
Right. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
But Jessica, the argument they're making now is when these killers who have their sentence overturned, what they call exonerated, I'd call them, the sentence has been overturned. They blame it on the prison life that the prison life gave them PTSD.
Yeah.
Or caused them trouble to make them kill again. Not that because anything to make you think that it was not. We had the guy who tried to push the cop into the. I did an episode on him who tried to push the cop into the freeway, and was killed. And they blamed the same thing, prison life. He was he had his conviction for murder overturned.
Because they were all such innocent, sweet little angels before they went into prison.
That's
Yeah.
right.
Mhm.
That's right. Sheldon Johnson, who went on Joe Rogan,
Oh.
he was given chance after chance after chance, and eventually the judge said, "Next time you get in front of me, I'm going to throw the book at you." And of course, he reoffended because he was a top blood gang member.
Mhm.
And then they get his sentence reduced. He gets out. His neighbors hear a guy in the apartment say, "Please, I have kids." At gunshots, and then he's walking in and out. Sheldon Johnson, Joe Rogan's guest,
Mhm.
his miracle, who was introduced on Joe Rogan as a miracle of rehabilitation, is walking in and out in disguises, blonde wig, glasses, all sorts of disguises, carrying, and they found the torso. They found
Yeah,
the
caught in the
torso,
apartment
the head,
with the
right, the
dismembered
head
body.
in his the dismembered, some of the dismembered body in the victim's apartment, some of the dismembered
Mhm.
body in
Hmm.
his freezer. So
Yeah, I
that
guess.
will
Oh,
that
sorry.
and yeah, that wasn't such a good rehabilitation story.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. There weren't many cases where Rob actually thought somebody was innocent. I think Temujin is probably the only one. He is, and he was probably one of the two last holdouts on Leo. So it was always like if Rob thought you were innocent, then you were innocent.
I was thinking about this. Definitely Temujin Kensu. He was still a holdout on Leo, but he kind of
Are you
wavered a
talking
little
about
bit. He
Leo
said
Frank?
Leo Schofield. Sorry, I should. Yeah, he is a convicted murderer. I should really refer to him with his full name, not like he's Bezzy mate Leo. No, yeah. He did. Rob did kind of say towards after listening to quite a lot of prosecutors episodes, and Rob knew the case backwards and forwards anyway. Kind of said, I think he probably did. That's what I believe in my kind of heart of hearts. But he could understand why people felt the other way. But the other case that I was thinking of, where Rob did come to a view, not that the person was innocent per se, but that they were. This is Ralph Stokes was convicted of. Was it a triple murder or double murder and a robbery? And he was convicted as the gunman. Rob the prosecutors are covering it. They did 4 episodes, and for the first 2 episodes, I was like, "This guy's guilty. This guy's so guilty." I was in Brett's inbox saying, "What are you doing? This guy's guilty." And Rob listened to the last couple of episodes before me, and he commented and said, "Yeah, I think he was probably the getaway driver rather than the gunman. I think, yeah, not saying he's innocent, but he was one of the witnesses against him had been the gunman." And I was like, "Well, if Rob thinks that, then he's probably right." Yeah, Ralph Stokes. I really can't think of any others. Rob, like several of us, are kind of a guilty AF juror.
So, well, now, Michael, what about what are some of the cases you've covered on Roundup? I apologize that I should have been listening and I haven't, but I will remedy that.
Oh, I'm not really active in it, as I don't know if I'm going to start back up. I got a new job and kind of it takes too much time. And I was following trials. We covered we covered the Karen Reed, and Karen is guilty of sin. Or, well, I mean, I guess the argument is in another case that maybe the argument is intent, whether Karen meant to hit him. So I did all the coverage of that. I did. I don't know what Rob felt about the lady we covered in Florida, Benefield, where she was, whether it was self-defense or if she shot her ex or the father of her kid. So that was another one I covered. I think we all agreed the guy that realtor in Las Vegas, Torres, where he was really dumb. He got on the stand and tried to say, "Well, I didn't do it," even though he was searching at his job trying to find the property of the other person. So those are kind of and I did several episodes with Jay Wild's attorney. So those are the kind of the ones I covered. Daybell with Anna. She was very into that case. So I covered that with her and learned about it. And that one was obvious that she didn't. Now I guess she's on trial now, and she's defending herself in Arizona. So we'll see how she does in that one. I don't think it'll go well, and she'll be convicted of that one.
That one triggers me, I guess, because of the kids.
Correct. It's hard. I mean, I think, but the kids were older. But yeah, it was not good, and that they killed them believing they were like the enemy of God or whatever, or things or demons. So it was very sad. So those are the cases that I can remember that I covered.
So
Now, I don't know if I could do. I don't know. It was very hard covering Karen like every day, Karen Reed case, and doing that again. That's another fanatic of the people that believe she is innocent. How you handle that, and so I never gained enough popularity that people like I got that much hate mail for it or whatever. So I kind of went under the radar for Karen, but some of my friends that have been covering it have certainly been in like Turtle Boys crosshairs. So
okay.
Yeah, welcome to my world.
Yeah.
Welcome to my world. Yeah.
Well, now I
Roberta
told
read
her-
out at least one of them on the podcast, and that was very funny.
I'm sorry.
I told you, Roberta, and I'll make it public now. I worked with the son of Judge Cannoni
Oh,
in
yeah.
Louisiana.
She's a
Are
defense
you
lawyer.
conflicted out of covering it?
No,
then?
she's the judge. Cannoni.
No,
Yeah,
you.
no, I know. I know she is. She's a defense lawyer, though.
He was an insurance defense, but now he's working for a plaintiff's law firm.
Oh.
Mhm.
Yeah, the son of Beverly or Bev.
Mhm.
Okay, because is it? I guess it's a different name. Was it the judge? Was there a judge that covered Trump's that was Canone too without the E? Or am I thinking something else? But
I don't recall. I lost track of those cases. There were so many.
That was Judge
So
Cannon.
or yeah, maybe Cannon. But yeah. So Karen Reed's another one that I don't know if I'll wait once she goes through the appellate process before I try and deal with that.
It's
But
just,
I
it
have
really
some
reminds
Karen
me.
Reed fans at work that I've had to talk to.
Yeah, Lisa, it really reminds me of the beginning of the West Memphis 3. What was years ago to cover the West Memphis 3.
Mhm.
When I mean, if you go to my first episode, if you want to even call it that, someone put on Reddit, how pathetic to talk to yourself into a tape recorder or something like that about it. But you go back and you can see it's just downvoted into oblivion. Everyone's furious with me for saying they're guilty, and not so much anymore. So things turn and change in true crime, and people become. The more people will say, will are able to say someone's guilty. I think that I think it frees up other people to be braver and get out there. But right now we're like in the beginning of Karen Reed. I think Free Karen Reed is going to fall apart. I mean, I think it's always going to be there. I think if she gets convicted, they're going to try to get her out of prison. It's never going to end. Karen Reed will never stop manipulating and trying to get out of killing John O'Keefe. That I don't think that will ever stop. So it will. You have time, Lisa. It will go on and on and on. I feel.
Yeah, I have a feeling about that one too. And she's either going to poison the jury pool so badly that she ends up with an acquittal, a la OJ, or she's going to get convicted and it's just never going to end. So.
Right, and there's also sort of all sorts of, I have my feelings as to why I feel it was intentional and having to do with the evidence. I won't, bore you with that, but there's also the apologists who feel she's kind of guilty of, I'll call them apologists, of something, of something. Maybe she was too drunk. Maybe she didn't know what she did. I think the evidence clearly shows why it's a murder 2 charge and not something else. But I think that we always want to put the kindest face on things. I think there's like very human need to say, especially, too much reality is hard to take,
Yeah, I guess the problem is that that a conspiracy theory of 30 people is more sexy than a lady that was drunk and angry and she backed up into him. So I don't know what the people that really follow her, because I mean they try and say the physics, but I don't even think the people even know what physics is when they try and make that claim. So it's the same thing with Adnot. Like I mean, we're never gonna. I mean, unfortunately with Adnot, we're never gonna know what happened that entire afternoon. So in the evening, exactly what time hay was put in the ground, but that really doesn't matter. So a lot of cases, I mean, like for example, with Scott Peterson and Lacey Peterson, I don't think we'll ever know exactly when he killed her during that night. Just that he dumped her body the next day. So it probably was the morning. Maybe it was the morning. Maybe it was sometime in the evening. But we're never going to know all those details. But we don't. The problem is, I think people think because of CSI and because of the movies we watch that you need to know the exact minute. And if the prosecutor says they killed her with the left hand, but it was really the right hand, they got to let her go.
Right.
That's just crazy.
Yeah. And that they think you have to have, if you shoot somebody, they have to have the weapon that you used, even though disposing of something like that is pretty simple most of the time. Yeah. But that's because they've gotten the wrong impression from media and entertainment.
Yeah. So, I mean, you watch these shows like CSI or Bones or whatever, and you think that there's 7 PhDs working on the case, when unfortunately the police are just ordinary people and trying to do their best, and they're going to screw up and make mistakes. And, I mean, it's not a vast conspiracy. Just, I think Brad always said, like, just assume that it's stupidity or just being wrong instead of nefarious reasons. So...
Yeah, I think the free Karen readers are made up of some people are really good people who just got duped by a very powerful innocence fraud campaign with the help of the federal investigation. And I think there are a lot of people who are criminals themselves and are on Team Criminal and just want to see her get away with it. You've gotten who hate the police. There's a real element of hatred of the police on the free Karen Reed side. And my critical thinking before I knew anything about the case is what woman would spearhead a witness. Actually, I didn't know at that time she spearheaded it, but why didn't she call off the dogs with a witness harassment campaign led by Turtle Boy, which was really led by her and her lawyers, but why didn't she ever say no? Don't stop doing it. Please don't intimidate the witnesses. But
does that Turtle Boy guy have a direct connection to her, or is he just an online fanboy?
So there was a woman called Natalie Bernschneider-Wawicki who very early on saw the news stories about Karen Reed. I believe, don't quote me on this, this is my vague memory. I believe she may have known her in the past and reconnected with her. And she introduced Karen Reed to Aiden Turtle Boy Carney. And that's where that marriage started. So Natalie Bernschneider-Wawicki, in the beginning, they always talked on an encrypted app, which should be your red flag number 1, but that she was the middle woman between Aiden Carney and Karen Reed before Natalie dropped out altogether and then eventually turned to the state. There's a pretty compelling interview with Natalie Bernschneider-Wawicki that I've gone over on my channel online that you can find that really tells the whole beginning, a fascinating beginning of how they orchestrated what I'd call an innocence fraud campaign for Karen Reed pre-trial, which is so different than what we've seen in America before. And already there's another case where a man killed his wife has some of the same officers involved in bringing in the Karen Reed case as a defense. So It has
But does he have a personal
lasting
stake in it, or
implications.
just happened to? That's what I can't figure out.
I think it's his
Making so much money on
Yeah.
I mean, these things are like money machines. These innocence fraud campaigns. Certainly, there's not a lot of money in the guilty person gets convicted or guilty person gets accused of a crime or goes on trial. It's not the most compelling story, but if you say they're really innocent, then there's always new theories and new avenues to travel. So he's making a ton of money on it, and that's really the lure. How he knew he would make a ton of money on it, I don't know, but he
gets that money from like people that just make donations to pay him to promote her innocence.
Right. He said he was making $50,000 a month on it. I don't know if he still is.
Wow, that's crazy.
Wow.
So he's
I think
riding
that
around
might be a
in
bit of
Lexus.
bragging. I'm not convinced he's making that much, to be fair. I think he might be bragging a bit.
He could not be. Could not. Very true, Jessica.
But I don't know. I mean, I don't know. We kind of joked about some of the other defense lawyers that were doing the $5 haulers. So I don't know how much he did YouTube, and how much I don't do that. I never did that. I never didn't gain much popularity to go on YouTube and have people pay me $5 or $10 for me to say hi on YouTube. So, and then I'm just very worried that all these other cases. I mean, Richard Allen was another one that a lot of publicity before social media, and I think Kohlberg will be another. It will be the next one when his trial comes around. Hopefully we'll see we'll see what the evidence is, and hopefully Kohlberg's won't be the same media storm for the defense. But
I'm going to have to ask you more about that trial. But what I wanted to say about Aidan Kearney, I want to use his real name. Turtle Boy is ridiculous. Aidan Kearney. I suspect that there may allegedly be a direct financial connection between Karen Reed's defense team and Turtle Boy. I think she may be paying him, and I think she may be paying other influencers as well. I'm sorry if that's libel or slander, but that's how it seems to me. That's what it looks like. And if he's making anything like 50 grand a month, then that seems pretty sus to me. But he might just be making it from supporters, I suppose. But
he's getting paid in some way. I would argue that just from what I've seen of innocence fraud campaigns, they promise a lot more money than they ever pay. They usually are very cheap and renege on all their promises to pay anyone. See Pam Hobbs for evidence of that. But that they really paid him in leaking information and salacious stories to him that he wrote about. So he would have all the inside knowledge, some of it true, some of it not true. Some of it would be a theory.
Some of it would be inadmissible.
It would be real evidence that it was leaked to him first. And then what the lawyers did, which David Yannetti and Alan Jackson, was especially David Yannetti, he would leak his own, he would reference his own leaks in his motions and say it's been reported as. Well, it wasn't. It was, you leaked it. It came from the mind of Karen Reed, and then you sent it to Turtle Boy, and then he wrote it down and released it on his blog. That's not. It's reported as. So they use that to craft a defense. And that's something that goes beyond the rules of their profession, and I hope that they're called into account for, but probably not. Sorry to be a downer, guys. I'm the downer. I just have a very realistic view of how these things
we're
go.
realistic. That's exactly it. But if the prosecution did anything like that, oh my God, the world would be over. It would be so horrible.
If the prosecution tried to enter an expert who came along halfway through the trial and said, that looks like a dog bite, and the prosecution had put her in, they'd have been hounded from pillar to post for daring to do such a thing. Karen Reed's defense rocks up. It's the breach of one of the rules, I can't remember which one, Judge Canone lets it go, has let Marie Russell through the Daubert hearing again. But the prosecution would never have got away with that. There is a lot more leeway given to defense lawyers, and to an extent, that's, people are entitled to a vigorous defense, but there's still rules, and they're definitely being bent, if not broken.
Yeah. Well, what
Yeah, I
happens
thought
in
that
the
was
U.S.
you
is
have to watch
American
that,
defense
Lisa.
attorney. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Roberta.
You
I'm
just have to
sorry.
watch that. I would love to know your opinion. I would love for you to watch that dog bite expert, Dr. Marie Russell, who's opened up a whole new avenue for me as a cat expert. I have years of hands-on feline experience, and I'm charging $600 an hour
Mhm.
Yeah.
now as an expert. But I'd just be very curious as to your reaction to that hearing. It's goes over 2 days and weeks apart, and it's fascinating. She was just eviscerated, and
Yeah.
it was like
Mm.
getting a ruling from Mars that the Judge Canoni was like, "Yep, she's everyone." It was like, who wasn't free Karen Reed, because they think everyone on their side is fabulous. So not the
Yeah.
but everyone. I know we're all a little biased, but I thought I could be fair and say no. She has some points. She had the background. She should come in. They're not barred from finding another dog expert, but there's no other dog, quote unquote. She's not a dog expert.
Mhm.
She's a doctor who treated 4 wounds. My friend
you.
or my friend Ann said that what they should, like, if it was a real case, insurance adjusters or insurance complaints should have been like an expert that you would go to, because insurance agents deal with dog bites all the time. Like they're investigating when somebody sues that their dog bit them. So that would be a more of an expert. I mean, there's vets, and
An
there's
ER
doctors,
doctor.
and all they could find was somebody that had dog bites from 25 years ago.
Yeah.
Like, and same thing with that other doctor, the other doctor who they found that we thought he was going to die on the stand, actually physically die. He sounded like Darth Vader. So, but I mean, on the other side, getting back to Jessica, not this would, when we also had the craziness with the Alec Baldwin trial where it was where they realized that the prosecutor was trying to pull some strings by hiding the bullets from the defense, and his case gets dropped immediately in the afternoon. So that was another case I did cover from day to day, and along with the Hannah Gutierrez trial. So I remember that. But it's one time kind of not Samantha, but the things that the prosecution tried and didn't get away with it in that trial.
There were some very odd things about Hannah Gutierrez Reed's trial. It more concerned me about Hannah than Alec Baldwin. Just the whole, I just thought it was odd the way that they had the what do you call it, the bullet supplier, just sort of leading people around, putting things in his pocket. I thought it was very odd, and it made me uncomfortable, very uncomfortable with her whole conviction.
Well, but in the end, though, she is the gatekeeper for weapons and ammunition, whether it's live or blank. And she failed. I mean, she should have been the one to hand him that gun, not an assistant director or production assistant or whoever. It wasn't Hannah Gutierrez handing him the gun. It should have been her handing him the gun. And it should have been her ensuring that the gun was safe. And she didn't do that.
Correct.
And she had live ammunition on set, which is a no-no.
Correct.
So,
but there was just things about that trial that made me very uncomfortable. And I almost, and I had her lawyer say, "Yeah, I'm coming on," and then he backed out. I would have loved to talk to him. But I had some real questions about how that went, and just, it just made me, I agree with you, Lisa. I was just very conflicted during that trial, very conflicted.
But
getting back, I don't remember what Robb. I don't remember. I think Robb might have been on he might have been on the defense on that one.
I think he was. Now I think about it, I think he was. I think he was on the free Alec Baldwin train with me. Yeah.
I mean, that case was easily. I mean, it was very easily a civil case, whether or not it got to criminal. But it was just all the things that went on the set. That, like, I mean, it wasn't the first live shooting on the set. Alec Baldwin was like rushing her and yelling at her, and as an executive producer, and has been on set for a long time with guns, that he should have known better of how. I mean, there's a point where it becomes criminal when you do something really bad, and that you know better. So, but. It is what it is, and I think she got her 18 months. The other guys, because they pled, got like unsupervised supervision for 6 months or a year. So,
yeah.
So
I think Baldwin should have faced some criminal liability because as an executive producer.
I agree. But his career is over, and that's what matters the most to him.
Because
he's not getting that back.
He let that culture go on. But one thing it's gonna hurt him in the pocketbook, because I don't think that movie's ever gonna get released. I think it's dead in the water.
Yeah, that one is. I think he did a reality show with his family, but I don't think Rust will ever get released.
Yeah. Disaster. I mean, it's almost like a curiosity now. I mean, he had such a bad reputation before this on set, and I think that the fact that he just on an off moment cocked the gun, and whether he placed his finger on the trigger or rested his finger on the trigger or pulled the trigger, he cocked the gun and pointed it at a whole group of people.
He said he never pulled the trigger.
Right. He said he never miraculously fired, but he cocked the gun. And what was he doing? Fantasizing about shooting into a group of people. I mean, that was the key element to me. There is what was he doing? There was no need in that scene to do any of those motions. So what was going on set? And I just feel like we haven't heard the full story.
I don't think it was
went on between Helena Hutchins and Alec Baldwin, and what was really going on there.
I thought they were doing camera blocking, so there wasn't even a scene.
Correct. They were practicing for the scene.
But there was no blocking of. He didn't have to cock the gun. He just had to pull it out a little bit from his holster.
But he also tried to say, when the production assistant or whoever handed him the gun, who wasn't Hannah Gutierrez, he asked them if it was safe, and they said yes. So he didn't even know there was a bullet.
He also said that Helena Hutchins guided him through the motions that killed her.
Yeah.
Remember that horrible interview? Yeah. And that's when people are telling stories like that. That's a big clue for me. When you're why are you putting the blame on the victim here? That she asked you, move a little to the left, do this, that's good. Why? What was that about? He's such a disturbed. I stood next to him at the opera, but I said nothing to him. He was just there. But he's the voice of the Met Opera. But he's just like hated. And I think he's hated in Hollywood. And he may show up in a few bit things, but his big career is over. He had to sell his Hampton house, and for narcissistic actors like that, that's the real punishment. He could only play. And what's compelling to me about this story is that he supported Adnan Syed, Stephen Avery, and Brendan Dassey. And I said, well, I thought back when this happened, why was he supporting all those killers? Did he think that he was capable of murder? And he wrote also on Twitter, I wonder what it would feel like to kill someone.
Well, let's not forget his wife, that's basically the actress of Elizabeth Warren, who pretends to be Spanish, even though she's like from the Bronx or something.
Kyle, don't get me started.
I mean, the fact that people do that, it's
Hilaria Baldwin.
Yeah, it's like, I don't know, it's these people that pretend. And I mean, doesn't she still own it? Doesn't she still pretend to be Spanish?
She's still talking in the fake Spanish accent.
It's amazing they can get away with it.
I mean, if I were
I'm actually from New York. This is all on.
Oh, really? There you go.
Hey! Speaking of that, you'll get a chuckle out of this. Randomly, don't ask me why. I never watched this show, but for some reason, the headline news, sex and murder, true crime show was on this morning. It was about a porn star that had a fake British accent. So he pretended to be British, even though he was from Kansas.
Okay.
Wow.
Wow. Yeah. So, and I just want
I
to
guess the
comment on the
dialogue is only
trend.
minimal. You only have to fake it so much. You only have to fake it. Dialogue's very minimal in porn, so you only have to fake it in a few
Yeah.
lines.
And nobody's really going to notice if you drop it.
No, we're
'cause they're
not watching
paying
it for
attention to the dialogue.
not watching it for the plot line.
Yeah. So, but now I wanted to comment on the trend that we're seeing more and more in criminal defense is judges are being cowed by claims of constitutional import. For example, not letting a witness testify because they're not qualified to do so when it's on behalf of the defense, that violates constitutional rights. But letting one testify, letting them through, then you're okay with the Constitution. Because that's what attorneys are doing. If you look at the Dalia DiPolito trial and all the claimed constitutional claims they tried to raise during her trial to get evidence in or try and keep it out is crazy.
So, I mean, I don't know if you listen to the prosecutors. They had a good episode this week, or last week, on limine or arguments and motions of limine that kind of talked about that and how much gets in, and that I guess for people that don't watch it, we don't really know everything that goes on behind the scenes before a trial. So when it gets in the media, like these are just normal things, but we don't understand it. So, and then I mean, of course, they're like talking about how the media just says, as you said, that they don't want the truth to come out, so they want this person who got a Odinism degree from Trump University to testify, and they're not going to let them do that because they don't want the truth to come out. And that, I mean, I guess it's really hard to know, like, I mean, those Daubert hearings, exactly how low the bar is to get to be an expert, but you can't just find somebody on that street that says, yeah, I studied tea leaves in college. I should be allowed in.
I drink a lot of tea.
Or just, I mean, like with the
I
dog,
can read the leaves.
The dog expert. I'm like, you have all these vets, you have a whole million people that work with dogs, and you find one person that treated 4 dog bites in the 1980s, and they're the expert. Like, that's the craziness.
Marie Russell claims she's treated hundreds of thousands of dog bites or seen hundreds of thousands, and then underestimated at 500 to 1,000 treating dog bites, which to me even sounds high, that she never had to prove, which Judge Canotti wrote in her ruling as fact, that she's treated so many dog bites. She never had to prove that in court. But I think, to answer Lisa's question, I think I knew that Alessi, Karen Reed's new pro bono lawyer, would argue that it was her constitutional right to have a defense and go that sort of direction, because he had nothing else. And you don't want to be seen as blocking someone's constitutional rights. That's the power of it. As Americans, something we all honor is our Constitution, and we don't want to violate someone's rights. So it's a kind of guilt trippy, I don't know, argument. I think it works. They're using it because it works. And it's always, our legal system is not static. It's always defining itself and moving on and changing and learning things from other cases. So
I also love the Constitution, by the way. I think, but just quickly on Marie Russell, if Karen Reed's defense believed that those were dog bites, they would have got a forensic odontologist. I think it's that simple. They would have got someone who testifies on dog bites and forensic odontology. Yes, there's been disputes about the field itself, but they can testify this is a dog bite. In terms of like the constitutional violation thing, I think it works. It's I can't remember. Lisa will probably remember this and get it right in a minute. It's if the judge has made an error in constitutional rights, then on appeal, that's much more likely to be upheld than some of the other ones, such as like ineffective assistance. And also, I think something I see a lot is people pointing to the UK and saying, well, they've got people going to jail for Facebook posts. We don't have that here, which is true. You're doing much better than us on that front. And defending the Constitution against becoming that kind of legal system, I think is a good thing. It's an effective argument. It works, but that doesn't make it true. The things that are happening are not constitutional violations. It's not violating the Constitution to say you can't drag in, Richard Allen can't drag in these 5 random men who live nearby and have unusual religious beliefs and say they killed 2 children. That's not a if they were dragged in for that, I think it would be a violation of their constitutional rights. That's said as a non-lawyer, obviously, but that's how it sounds to me.
Yeah, and that there is a First Amendment right on freedom of religion and association, which has been used by white supremacists when their white supremacist beliefs were used against them at trial. But there's a fine line. And I think what's happening, though, that it is true, then the judges, Judge Cagnoni and any judge who allows something in that we think probably shouldn't be in, is because if they don't allow it in and the appellate court believes that that was a wrong decision, then you have to redo everything. And when you look at Jason Corbett, who was murdered in North Carolina by his father-in-law and wife, Molly Martins, and her father, former FBI agent Tom Martins, they kept out hearsay statements made by children in a, I guess it was kind of like a Child Protective Services interview. And the North Carolina Supreme Court reversed their convictions and sent everything back for a new trial because those statements, which allegedly supported their defense, were kept out of the trial and could have changed the outcome of the trial. And that's where it all comes down, is somebody saying that could have changed the outcome. So it wasn't a fair trial that they didn't have that. So
yeah,
so
that's
another horrible case.
Yeah, see, that makes sense to me, and I think we're going to see more of this from Richard Allen's lawyers. I know he's got new lawyers, but it'll be meet the new boss, same as the old boss, and that's very unfortunate. But if we're talking about constitutional violations, I think gag orders, overbroad gag orders, are a problem. I'm not saying they're necessarily. I don't know enough to say they breached the First Amendment, but I think some of them are overbroad. And in Delphi, stopped the victims' families talking, while the defense attorneys were putting in press releases as motions and getting away with it. So yeah, I thought that was very unfortunate, and that's a constitutional violation I'd like to see people talk about more.
Once Richard Allen's case goes through the appellate direct appeal process, I'm going to be looking at that one. Now, the gag order, if the defense was making press releases, they were probably violating it as well. And I've seen claims that was unfortunately not acted on, or they were allowed to do it. But you have to think the problem is that you can't have a tainted jury, because then you're just going to have to keep doing it over and over and over again. So that's the basis of gag orders in most cases, is to prevent any side from putting information out there that can taint a jury pool. Because I
And
think
that-
this case was
yeah.
not moved to another venue. It was being tried in the same county in which it occurred. I could be
And that
mistaken
makes
about
sense.
that.
Yeah. No, I think it was. Yeah, it was. Yeah. It was. So they definitely did breach the gag order, and they also put out a press release just before the gag order was enforced, after telling the judge, giving the judge their word, their honest, their best promises they wouldn't do such a thing. They don't want to try this in the media. They were the Franks memorandum that they put in, however many pages of Odinism, and that was a glorified press release in part. And I think I think it's a shame that wasn't acted on more. With that said, when Judge Gull removed them from the case for at best allowing, at worst orchestrating a leak of crime scene photos with Abby and Libby's bodies in the photos, they were removed by Judge Gull, and then Indiana Supreme Court put them back in. And I understand I understand why they did that. They don't want the case to get overturned in the future because they were removed. But yeah, I feel that I think they got away with a lot there. And I see the same thing with Karen Reed's defense, and I don't like it. That's my very sophisticated thought. I don't like it.
We don't like it, Jessica. It's innocence fraud.
Exactly.
But we have to, unfortunately, we don't make those decisions, but we can comment on them.
Yeah,
and
I'm
we
glad
can
I
hold
don't
our
make them.
opinions.
Yeah, I'm glad I don't make them, but I'll definitely comment. Yeah.
So, all right. Well, I think that is final thoughts on Robb. Let's start with Michael.
For me, it's really like I just miss being able to text him. Like I would text him after this or tomorrow morning and say, "Hey, this happened on Reddit. Did you watch the prosecutors? Did you listen to our based on fact presentation?" And he would comment on it. So I just really hard not being able to do that anymore.
Roberta.
Yeah, it's I just feel very sad that he's gone. It was a loss to the whole community, and a wonderful person to know.
Yeah. Jessica.
Yeah, I'll miss Rob as well. I think of Bill. I don't know Bill. I haven't spoken to him. But to be with someone for such a long time and to lose them must be incredibly hard. I was thinking about something I saw Rob share before he passed, and it's just a quote post on Facebook. But when we talk about Karen Reed and the kind of the different camps in that, and it just says you get to a point in life where you don't care who's mad, why they're mad, and who they're recruiting to be mad with them. It's peaceful over here, and I'm glad that Rob got to that peaceful place.
Yeah. And I too, I'm going to miss him. I'm going to miss seeing his posts. I mean, I was reading through his Reddit posts, and something I noticed is even the trolls tended to respect him and leave him alone on Reddit. I could be mistaken about that, but the threads that I looked at, even people who didn't agree with him were still respectful. And I think that says a lot about who Robb was.
Yeah.
So, but I will miss seeing his posts and seeing him on X, and just being able to go to him when I get a wild hair to do an Adnan Syed episode and have him come in and help me because he was just so good. He was such a great guest.
Yeah, for sure.
Yes, he knew the details in and out. So
Yeah. So, All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining me or joining us. And I hope you have a great rest of your Sunday. This was our tribute to Robb Chadwick, who is no longer with us, and he is going to be greatly missed. Thank you. Kyle and I will be back in 2 weeks with an update on the season 3 and some of the season 2 episodes that we've covered. And I hope everyone has a great rest of your Sunday. And take care of each other, because you never know when your time is going to end. Have a great 2 weeks and stay safe.
Thank you, Lisa. Have a great week.
Thanks, Lisa.